Hey guys, let's just go on and begin. I won't trim this or whatever at the beginning, so you saw me getting ready. Hey, what we're going to be looking at is more about the executive branch. With Section 1, we looked at the president. We looked at his qualifications, some of the, you could say, some of his duties or responsibilities. He's commander in chief, all that. What we're going to be looking at now is what can the president do? What are his powers? And so we're going to be splitting his powers up into different categories. And let's just go on and start off with executive powers. So, what can the president actually do? Well, the president appoints people in the executive branch. Somewhere around 2 or 3 thousand people he appoints. The rest, we know that the executive branch consists of about 2 million employees. All of those are not hired and fired by the president. The president doesn't interview all 2 million of them. The president just interviews the upper echelon of the managers, you could say. And there's about 3,000 people, including military officers. And the president has the power to nominate and appoint. However, the Senate has to confirm them. And so the Senate confirms, give or take, about 2,000 of these jobs. And a lot of these, with the Senate, they're confirmed in bulk. And so the Senate would say, oh, the president has nominated these 150 people, or has promoted these 150 officers in the military. Let's vote on all of them at once. And that's what they do most of the time. Now, the big names like the Secretary of Defense, the Attorney General, they're going to get individual meetings and individual votes. What are we talking about here? What people can the president appoint? Supreme Court justices, judges, ambassadors, cabinet members, including we have the Secretary of Defense. We also have the Undersecretary of Defense. We have undersecretaries for all sorts of different areas within each department that the president will nominate, and the Senate must confirm. Almost all of these appointees serve at the pleasure of the president. What that means is the president can fire you if he wants. So at the pleasure. So if the president's happy with you, you can stay. If the president is not happy with you, if he's not pleased, then he can say you're fired and appoint someone else. Just about all of the appointed positions are like that. The only exceptions, which you don't have to know for the test, are independent agency directors. Those have to be fired with just cause. Now, just cause could be the person's refusing to follow his orders, or some other easily justifiable action. The president, under his executive powers, he can issue executive orders. Executive orders are, it's kind of like a law, but it's not, because a law has to be passed by Congress. An executive order is a rule that the president is going to enforce. He goes, this is how I'm going to interpret this law, and this is how we are going to do things in the executive branch. He's the chief executive, so he can. However, it's not specifically mentioned. The words executive orders aren't listed in the Constitution, but the presidents do that. And so Congress can pass a law, and the president can say, I'm going to enforce it this way. This is how I see this law. And so that's a big thing. It's not a law, but it carries the weight of a law. The president can issue signing statements as well. Maybe the president doesn't like this part of a bill that's been sent to him for him to sign. He goes, I'm going to sign it, but I'm going to tell you, I'm not going to enforce this part. Or this is how I interpret this section of the law that I just signed. Once again, these are not in the Constitution. Do they carry any weight? Not really, but it just lets everyone know, the president saying, hey, I don't like this part. I'm going to interpret it a little different. The president has the power to invoke executive privilege. Executive privilege is basically keeping something a secret. There are some things that people just shouldn't know, the general public just shouldn't know, because it deals with national security. And there are other things that should be open, that should not be kept secret. And the public has a right to hear about all those things. It's our government, after all. But there are some things that should just be kept secret. And if someone wants that information, the president says, nope, I am claiming executive privilege. It is mine to keep secret. Once again, it's not mentioned in the Constitution, but we allow it. And the courts have ruled that the president does have the power to keep things secret only if it's in the interest of national security. You can't use it to cover up a crime. Nixon, for example, tried to claim that the tapes, which we will learn about next week, these tapes should be kept secret. And the Supreme Court said, no, this is part of a criminal investigation. You must turn them over. You cannot claim that. The president also has diplomatic powers, diplomacy, dealing with other nations. The president can make a treaty. He can forge alliances. He can make trade relationships. An actual treaty, if the president signs one, requires 2/3 of the Senate to agree. Congress can change the treaty. So the president signs a treaty, says, here it is, sign it. The Senate can say, no, we're going to change this part. And they change it and they can vote on it. Other Congresses can override treaties. The president, if he doesn't want to go through the treaty process where the Senate gets involved with a 2/3 vote, he can sign or make an executive agreement. An executive agreement is basically just like a contract. It's the president saying, hey, other nation, as long as I'm president, this is how, let's work out this deal. The president also has the power to recognize a new country or a foreign government, and that's called diplomatic recognition. So let's say someone overthrows a country. The president can say, you know what? I don't recognize you. I'm not going to talk with you. I'm going to talk with these other people instead. And the president has that power. And so diplomatic is diplomacy. Diplomacy is dealing with other nations. The president obviously has military powers. He's the commander in chief. The president has one of the biggest responsibilities he has is to keeping us safe. Several hundred times through our nation's history, the military has been called up to protect us. However, only 5 times have we actually been at war. In 1973, after the Vietnam War, we passed the War Powers Resolution. And the War Powers Resolution says, hey, President, you can send troops wherever you want, but you got to let us know. And there are some requirements. You have to let us know within 48 hours of sending troops. You can only keep them there for 60 or 90 days without our permission. And after that time, after those couple months, you have to get our permission to keep them there. Now, one little tidbit of information. Some people claim that this law, the War Powers Resolution, is unconstitutional because the president is commander-in-chief, which means he has the power over the armed forces. And Congress, with this law, is saying, hey, we get a say in this as well. Is it constitutional? Is it not? It's never been challenged in the courts, believe it or not. The president has legislative powers. He can propose legislation. With his State of the Union, he can say, hey, we need to do this. With the legislative powers, he signs a bill into law. He can also veto a law. He can say, nope, I'm not going to do it. And also the idea of threatening to veto. He can say, hey, Congress, you're discussing this bill. I don't like this part. And if you send it to me, I'm going to veto it. Congress has to make a decision. They're like, do we have enough votes to override the veto? And if not, why are we wasting our time? We better negotiate, or we better talk it over, or we better just drop it because the president's going to veto it. So threatening to veto it is a power. The president has judicial power. The president nominates all judges for the federal courts. He nominates Supreme Court justices, district court judges, courts of appeals judges. All those he gets to appoint. That's a big power because he can appoint people who share his beliefs. And so he can sway the judicial branch depending on if it's a liberal or conservative. They can sway the, I don't want to say outcomes, they can sway the judicial branch. The president also has the power to alter sentences. He can pardon people. And as we looked with President Trump, he just recently pardoned about 70 people, and he commuted the sentence of about 70 people. Pardoning is, hey, you're forgiven for this crime. It's wiped off your record. You will not go to jail, or if you've been in prison, it's been expunged. There's no record of it all, and you can't be tried for that crime again. He can also commute sentences, in which he would say, you know what? You were convicted. You were sentenced to 20 years in jail, 20 years in prison. I'm going to knock it down to 10 years. And so if the president believes that the judicial branch overstepped its boundaries with a sentence, he can change that. He has the power to fix that with it, the pardon power. The president, like I said, with appointing judges, that's a huge thing. And we know that. Just look at President Trump being able to appoint 3 judges to the Supreme Court, that most recent one, Amy Coney Barrett, and how big of a deal it was. Well, it is a big deal because judges serve for life. Amy Coney Barrett is not even 50 years old. She can serve on the courts for 40 years. Think about that. They can serve for decades and decades and decades. And they are very influential. And so it's a huge power for the president to appoint a judge to the Supreme Court. And that is a lasting legacy of a judge. Now that Trump is no longer president, his 3 justices that he put on there are going to continue to influence our country for decades. Like I said, the president has the pardon power. He can reprieve. He can issue grants of reprieve, which is a postponement. And he can do that for whatever he wants. He has that pardon power. He also has the power to offer amnesty, and that's one of the things that President Biden is going to do. He's going to provide amnesty to some illegal immigrants. Amnesty is a blanket pardon or a general pardon. Say in this case, illegal immigrants. Everyone who fits this category, you're pardoned. You're forgiven for the illegal immigration part. He has the power to commute a sentence. And these pardons and amnesty and reprieves and commutations, they are an absolute power. No one can do anything about it. So if the president wants to pardon all the convicted murderers in federal prisons, he can. And there's nothing we can do about it. And the courts have even said the president's pardon power is pretty much absolute. Let's see. Yep, that's about all for that. Informal powers. There are some things that the president can do that's not mentioned in the Constitution. One, he gets free publicity. He can, anytime the president speaks, TV cameras are going to be there, and then it's going to be posted to YouTube. The president is the leader of his political party. President Trump was the leader of the Republicans. Joe Biden is now the leader of the Democrats, so he can control the entire Democratic Party, their agenda. He has a huge staff to ensure a unified message. The presidents who are more popular tend to get more powers, more sway in things. If you are not well liked, if your approval rating is low, Congress may resist you a little more. But the president has all sorts of informal powers that you read about in the textbook. Now, what are some checks? What are some things to keep the president in line? Anything that the president does, executive actions, can be subject to judicial review. That the courts can say, you know what, President, you overstepped your boundaries. This executive action, this executive order is unconstitutional. You can't do it. One example is the line item veto. Back in the 90s, President Clinton signed a law that said you can veto certain lines in the budget. You don't have to approve it all, reject it all. You can reject this and that in a budget. The Supreme Court said, no, you can't do that because the Constitution says you can either sign it, veto it, or do nothing. It doesn't say you can sign some of it and veto some of it, so they declared it unconstitutional. Congress, another check on the president is Congress can say, you know what, President, we don't like this person. We're not going to approve them. We're not going to confirm your judge for Supreme Court. We're not going to confirm your attorney general choice. We can override a veto. You don't like this bill, but 2/3 of us do. We're going to override it. And then there are informal checks that the media and the public keep the president, you could say, honest and keep them in line. And the president knows that if he doesn't keep the public happy, that he is not going to get reelected in the future. That's a lot of stuff. I'm done for Section 2. If you have any questions, just send me an email and I can help you out. Until next time, see you.